Oftentimes, the best way to move forward is to take a look at what worked well in the past. For the previous 20 years or so, Sega's Sonic the Hedgehog series has been inconsistent to say the least. From experimenting with a vast variety of styles, to game titles being mired by issues and bugs, to simply being out of touch with what the Sonic the Hedgehog fanbase wants, it was pretty obvious that what the Sonic series needed was to return to its roots to receive the universal acclaim and admiration that it realized in its glory days in the mid-90s. Christian Whitehead, who is such a fanatic of the series he developed Sonic games for fun, was priorly contracted by Sega for the mobile ports of Sonic 1, 2, and CD. In 2015, he built an early version of the game which would eventually become Sonic Mania on his own, and presented it to the Sonic series lead producer Iizuka Takashi. Takashi liked it so much the game became a Sega-sanctioned piece of software. Upon release, the game became the highest praised Sonic game in the series in over 2 decades. It actually received the greatest acclaim since 1994's Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Sonic 3 was a game so ambitious it was too big to fit on a single cartridge. The full Sonic 3 experience was spread across Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, which when combined together with Sega's lock-on technology, the game became Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Earlier this year, Sonic Mania got a little extra content itself in the form of the Plus downloadable content, which added an all-new Encore mode as well as forgotten heroes of old from the Sega Sonic the Hedgehog arcade game, Ray the Flying Squirrel and Mighty the Armadillo. Though released nearly 25 years apart, the complete packages of Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Sonic Mania Plus are the pinnacle of the series in terms of quality and content. This is Versus, a segment where I take 2 video games, it could be a game and its sequel, or just 2 games from which many correlations could be made, and I compare and contrast the 2 to see which one is the overall better choice. Today it's the old school classic with lock-on technology versus the modern yet retro Sonic Mania with its newfangled DLC. Well, it's hard to talk about any 2 video game titles without mentioning it, so let's start with comparing the gameplay of these 2. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles is the natural evolution of the trilogy in the sense that it adds a few new mechanics and features to the game. Features added to Sonic 3 and Knuckles include battery save backup, 2 new playable characters in the form of Sonic's sidekick Tails and Sonic's new rival Knuckles, as well as elemental shield power-ups and Sonic's air slash attack. To this day, this is still the beefiest side-scrolling Sonic game, weighing in with 14 different zones and 3 different characters who are vastly different in playstyle to explore them with. Sonic is similar to before, his strength is his speed, and he offers the tried-and-true playstyle of running through the stage as fast as possible. Tails is fast too, but he can fly with his 2 tails to reach new areas and find new bonuses. Knuckles is a hybrid of these 2 styles, but he has the ability to glide and climb walls. This makes him the most versatile of the 3. Each zone not only looks distinct, but also offers mechanics to make it feel unique. Some zones are played freely with wide open spaces and little fear of obstacles interfering. Most others are more closed up and take a little more time to evaluate what your next step should be. The speed Sonic is known for is mostly always kept up, it seems. Even in the more platform-based stages, autopilot transitional segments break up the monotony, which keeps true the tradition of winding tubes and slides from Sonic 2. Other stages introduce all new elements like spinning tops, ropes to swing on, and climbers harnesses to make your way down the sides of pyramidal structures. Though some of these added pieces fall a bit flat in execution, it shows that Sega is trying to evolve the series without being too afraid to experiment a bit. Overall, everything just seems to be designed a bit better. Notable is the placements of hazards and enemies. Though oftentimes getting hurt is unavoidable, the spread of such instances make it feel a lot more fair than Sonic 1 and 2. Sega's ability to tweak what worked well with Sonic 1, 2, and CD in just the right way to make Sonic 3 and Knuckles feel more distinct is definitely commendable. The controls too have been tweaked just enough to merit discussion. Sonic is still very momentum-based, his size and weight versus his movement seem perfectly natural this time around. Tails feels lighter and his upward flight interacts with his weight and the gravity fights you exactly as you'd expect. Knuckles and his glides and wall grabs are effortless and easy to use. Seldomly, if ever, do the controls hinder the player. especially once the player understands how each character responds to inputs. The basic rules of the whole series still apply to Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Most enemies can be taken out with jumps on the head, 100 rings net you a 1-up, and bosses appear at the end of the zone. New to Sonic 3 and Knuckles is a sub-boss at the end of the first act and other small changes here and there. My personal favorite is the ease of access to extra lives. Depending on your ring count, hitting a checkpoint makes bonus area materialize, which will transport you to a prize level. With nothing to lose but lots of rings and lives to gain, these are a much needed and welcome addition to Sonic, as extra lives were a bit harder to come by in older games. Chaos Emeralds are also much easier to find as well, and as a bonus are much more enjoyable to achieve in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. No extenuating criteria must be met to access the Chaos Emerald stages. Now simply find the giant ring and enter it. This whisks you away to the famous Get Blue Balls stages, where the goal is to touch all of the blue spheres without hitting a red one. Though a little tough to master, the blue sphere stages feel a lot more fair and surmountable than the Chaos Emerald stages in Sonic 1, 2, and CD. Aforementioned elemental shields debut as well. The bubble shield lets you bound up and down like a bouncy ball, as well as gives you an unlimited supply of oxygen underwater. Fire Shield gives you invulnerability to fire elements, as well as allowing you to do a fire burst. Finally, there's the Electric Shield, which protects you from electricity-based attacks. It also lets your character double jump, plus has the added bonus of attracting rings to you. Boss battles are really the only thing that haven't evolved, but a few boss battles get more creative than what was seen in the previous core Sonic platformer titles. The game's difficulty is also greater. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is no walk in the park. Sure, there are moments of bliss, but frustrating moments only the Sonic series can provide are prominent. Overall, the gameplay in Sonic 3 and Knuckles is really solid. It improves most of the issues from its prequels and shows that Sega was dedicated to pushing forward and tweaking and refining the Sonic formula past my personal expectations, given what I had seen before. Of the Sega Genesis Sonic titles, I can wholeheartedly and comfortably say that not only is Sonic 3 and Knuckles the best title to play, the sheer amount of content and elements presented in it means almost everyone could find something admirable and desirable in it. The only critical thing I could say is perhaps the intermittent slowdown in the game, but for the most part, the game runs great, even on original Sega Genesis hardware like I'm using. Sonic Mania Plus's gameplay is extremely similar to that of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, to the point where it almost feels like the exact same. This makes total sense because really it'd be hard to refine it past the bar Sonic 3 and Knuckles set. Sonic Mania Plus unashamedly relies on the player's nostalgia, to the point where a lot of the stages in the game are nearly one-to-one translations of zones that originally debuted in Sonic 1, 2, CD, and of course 3 and Knuckles. Part of me wishes they kept some of the mechanics and ideas from the Sonic Advance games, but in this game's case, it wants to heavily remind you of Sonic's glory days on the Sega Genesis. The three heroes from Sonic 3 and Knuckles appear. Sonic is as fast as ever, Tails can still fly around and explore new areas, and Knuckles can still glide and climb. The Plus DLC added two new characters who had their own unique spin to the gameplay. The two characters from the arcade game, Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, make a long-awaited return to this series. Mighty the Armadillo is definitely the more varied of the two, and adds a few new mechanics never seen in the series before. Ray the Flying Squirrel is almost a clone of Tails, but rather than fly with his tails, he glides. The gliding is somewhat akin to the way Mario controls in Super Mario World when he has the feather power-up equipped. These two are a lot of fun to play around with, but are definitely not essential to experiencing what the game has to offer. Evolution of the series sort of takes a backseat to nostalgia and familiarity. A few times, the game breaks free and experiments with new elements, but almost synonymously, the things you're going to see and do in this game, Sonic and friends have done before. Really, where Sonic Mania shines is its authenticity. Although released 23 years after its contemporary, it feels like it came out only a year or two after Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The aesthetics and music also have that same feel. Aside from the game's 16:9 resolution, the beautiful 2D visuals and the CD quality soundtrack give the player a taste of what a true platforming Sonic the Hedgehog game could have been if it were perhaps released for the Sega Saturn console. the development team definitely didn't go into the game with a let's reinvent the wheel mentality, but rather, let's keep it simple and familiar. Therefore, the core mechanics really haven't changed from Sonic 3 and Knuckles to Sonic Mania Plus. The same general rules that apply to Sonic 3 and Knuckles still apply. Elemental shields return, as well as similar mechanics to obtaining the Chaos Emeralds. As is tradition, an all-new Chaos Emerald minigame is introduced, where a primitive Sega Saturn-esque polygon chases down a robot carrying it. Knowing fans, myself included, enjoyed the Get Blue Balls minigame from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, it was kept in Sonic Mania as a means to get medals to unlock bonus content and Easter eggs in the game. I could iterate again as to where Sonic Mania fails to evolve the series for the purpose of wanting to play it safe, but it's not entirely true. All new zones created just for Sonic Mania do actually exist in the game, just not really as much as I'd like. The recycled zones, remixed or not, get a bit stale since I've played through them before. What I enjoyed the most was the brand new stages made just for Sonic Mania. These are a good indicator of what could be, perhaps in a new Sonic title. Visually, everything has sort of been done priorly in the series, and it was surprising to see the sort of motifs they went with in Mania. It goes to show that although it seems like everything has been exhausted in the series, new level ideas and looks are still doable. Prime examples of Sonic Mania's very cautious evolution of the mechanics are where the acid here solidifies into jello by injecting it, or this segment where Sonic must shrink to access new parts of the stage. You can even turn into friggin' mini Super Sonic, so that's pretty cool. Difficulty has been cut back just a bit from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which is fine. Sometimes Sonic 3 and Knuckles was frustrating with how difficult it got, so generally, Sonic Mania has a good balance to it. Sonic Mania's Plus DLC also adds an Encore mode in which you play a slightly altered version of the game with two characters you can switch between, similar to Donkey Kong Country, and perhaps a homage to the gameplay from Knuckles Chaotix. Like a severely dumbed down Knuckles Chaotix. Sonic Mania is thoroughly enjoyable and the gameplay is just as good as it was in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which leads me to say that the winner of the best gameplay category is... it's a tie. The games are so similar in gameplay that it was pretty much an impossible decision for me to make in terms of giving either one of these two the edge. Sonic 3 and Knuckles must just be the apex of the series' potential, because Sonic Mania Plus doesn't make an effort to evolve it much. Little things are added here and there, but I can't really say I favor the gameplay of either one because they feel about the same to me. Time to move along, and what I'd like to look at next is the level design in the two games. After all, what good is gameplay if the environments you're exploring aren't fun to probe or look at? Sonic 3 and Knuckles pulls out all the stops in its stages. Sonic will be going so many different places in his adventure, and it's this that makes the game feel so daunting and substantial. Even the first zone of the game eschews the Sonic the Hedgehog tradition with the Angel Island zone. Instead of being your basic checkered floor, palm tree filled, sunny paradise, it's more woodsy. Funnily enough, the Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1 still seems to be the de facto standard in most other Sonic titles, but I admire the Angel Island Zone for its woody and waterfall-filled environment. Also, I'm going to take the time to mention that I absolutely love the transitions between levels in the game. It absolutely makes the world feel really connected, as if Sonic is actually going to all these places instead of just showing up there. Whether it be flying in on Tails' plane, having Knuckles figuratively flush the toilet on you, or this scene where Sonic and Tails are climbing a crumbling tower, which by the way is a spectacular use of the Sega Genesis hardware. You can just look at it. Guess what I'm meaning to say is that I like this.
I like it a lot.
Moving back to the level design itself, kudos to Sega for making an underwater stage that is actually rather enjoyable with the Hydro City zone. In some cases, playing this stage carefully will give you the minimal exposure to the water, which is a huge plus because water in Sonic games has always equaled no fun to me. Sure, some stages feel like they're just there for fluff like the Marble Garden and the Carnival Zone, because honestly it feels like retreading an already beaten down path, but the Ice Cap Zone is simply awesome in its scale and environment. It really feels like Sonic is exploring a giant ridge of snow-covered mountains. I can't even describe how big the smile on my face was when I arrived at the Death Egg Zone. Not only for how gutsy it is for Sega to allude to Star Wars, but also for how intimidating it felt to be there. Plus, I rather enjoy picking the boss's fingers off one by one. Some of my favorites include the Mushroom Hill Zone for its use of a ton of mushrooms, yet not once making me think of the Super Mario Bros., simply for how well the stage fits into Sonic's world despite its use of Mario's favorite power-up, as well as the Flying Battery Zone for its awesome soundtrack and its general scope. Even the Sandopolis Zone makes an impression with its huge pyramids and its rock climbing mechanics. Just in general, it feels like no matter what Sonic tried in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, all of the stages leave an impact for different reasons, good or bad. Considering the stages for Sonic 3 and Knuckles were divided amongst two different cartridges, bringing them all together whilst at the same time maintaining some semblance of unity, when it all comes together, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is both massive and has a lot of fun to experience. Each level connects together consistently, nothing seems out of place in the game's world, and each adds a new mechanic to the game that give it its own identity. Though some courses are a bit forgettable, the majority of what's presented here is ridiculously fun and memorable to boot. Moving along to Sonic Mania Plus, however, well, remember how I mentioned earlier in the video that it relies on nostalgia and familiarity? Well, it really relies on nostalgia and familiarity. The majority of the zones in the game are remixes or slight alterations of stages from Sonic 1, 2, CD, 3, and Knuckles. So if you've played the hell out of those games like me, you're not seeing a whole lot of new stuff. Even if it tries to be new stuff, if that makes any sense. You've got your typical overdone, overused, overrated Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1, the Chemical Plant Zone from Sonic 2, which again, I think is pretty overrated. I mean, how fun is it to fall into the acid and have to slowly jump up these gyrating platforms? It wasn't fun in Sonic 2, and it still really isn't fun now. You've got the Metallic Madness stage from Sonic CD, the Oil Oceans stage from Sonic 2, and a whole glut of other stages which, fun or not, don't push Sonic along much further, essentially admitting that, yeah, Sonic was better back then. You remember this? Remember this? Do you remember this? Do you? Do you? I'll admit, I like the remixes. I do, but it makes me hunger for what could have been, especially since Sonic Mania Plus actually does give a little bit of a taste with 4 all-new zones. The Studiopolis Zone mimics the carnival stages from Sonic games of old, but gives it a little bit more flair and modernity. The Press Garden Zone mixes together flowery tropical gardens juxtaposed with snow and frost-covered grounds to make something that is both beautiful and lovely to look at, and the motif of the plants flowering to make platforms contrasted with snowy wooded areas in the background give it an out-of-this-world, never-before-seen feeling. I love the Titanic Monarch Zone too. It's like a big giant funhouse, mixed with robotics, stained glass windows, all these elements you wouldn't think come together, but do. Shoot, I'll admit, I even like it better than the Death Egg from Sonic 2 and 3. The stage is almost like something a kid would build by combining Lego blocks, Kinects, and an erector set. These 3 are great, but the stage that had me absolutely drooling was the Mirage Saloon Zone. Yeah, I'll admit, I wasn't a fan of the first segment where you have to fly the plane, but once you get on the train, it makes me happy in so many ways. Alluding to train robberies and western movies of old, I love everything about this. It just struck me as a neat idea. Why not have Sonic on a train? Each boxcar can be designed differently with different loops and hazards, and generally the nixing of the conventional stage design in a series in favor of adding parlor pianos, pop guns, and pinball flippers to the world strikes all of the right chords with me. And I absolutely can't fail to mention the ultimate showing of fan service, the boss battle of this stage. It reunites the long-lost trio of Fang the Sniper, Bean the Dynamite, and Bark the Polar Bear who debuted in Sonic the Fighters. This shows how deep the fandom for the series goes, because Sega on their own volition would never bring these guys back, but the fans never forgot. Yeah, Sonic's new stages are terrific, that's why I can't understand why there are only 4 of them. Sega already redid and remixed classic Sonic stages in Sonic Generations, so why was the decision made to make the majority of the stages oldies? Either way, it gives me optimism for what a full-fledged Sonic Mania sequel could maybe do without being tethered to nostalgia or the classic series for that matter. There is a lot of potential here, but I can't shake the feeling that what we've got in Sonic Mania is just a taste. So it probably shouldn't come as a surprise when I say that Sonic 3 and Knuckles has better level design in my eyes. For one, there's a lot more uniqueness, and secondly, I think it pushes well past the design of its predecessors. In Sonic Mania, the remixes are fun and solid, and the 4 new stages are awesome, but I can't justify that saying a game with mostly reused stages and retreaded tropes is superior. Well, seeing as this video is getting pretty lengthy already, and I feel like I've already covered the beefier, more critical subject matters. For the final category, how about we just take a look at Best Extras. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is rather bare bones outside of the main game, with really the only extra content in the game being bonus boss battles and endings by collecting Chaos Emeralds. And you can't forget about the debug menu where you can access a stage select in the game sound test. It's got a 2-player competition mode, but that too feels like a bit of an afterthought. I mean, if you're looking to get more content out of an already substantial game like this, I'd recommend playing through with each of the characters individually. Outside of the main game itself, it doesn't really have a lot of fluff. You can also hook your Sonic 2 cart to your Sonic and Knuckles cart to play as Knuckles in Sonic 2, but I don't really think you can count that. Sort of running out of things to talk about, let's move on. Sonic Mania Plus not only has a fully animated intro, which is really spectacular by the way, it's got the aforementioned Encore mode. Granted, you have the Plus DLC, which adds a bit of replay value, and it's also got a time attack mode, which is pretty fun to play around with. After all, it's a fast-paced game, and it's fun to try and beat your best times. It's got a load of Easter eggs, silver and gold medals to collect to unlock more movies and character combinations. It's generally just got more stuff, which is to be expected in the achievement-driven era of video games. Yeah, why not? Sonic Mania Plus will win Best Extras category. Because, well, it does have more content outside of the main game, especially compared to Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So at the risk of trying to squeeze more comparisons and differences out of two games which are ridiculously similar, let's move on to my final verdict. So the winner of this episode of Versus is Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. Not only does this game hold up insanely well even today, to me it still represents the pinnacle of Sonic the Hedgehog's career. The fact that Sega held fans' interest in this series, despite not giving them a truly proper follow-up to Sonic 3 and Knuckles for 23 years, is truly a testament to how great the game is. Still the largest 2D Sonic game, it has a ton of great levels, it has fabulous new mechanics and features, and has 2 brand new characters to the mix. It's a title so ambitious, it had to be on 2 cartridges, and you can't forget that it had to coin an all-new lock-on technology just to experience it. Sonic Mania Plus on paper is very similar to Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It combines 2 elements, the software and the DLC, to make one game. It adds 2 new characters as well, and it adds a few new gameplay modes. It's got a fairly large main campaign, and it even innovates with 4 brand new zones to check out. Where I get hung up is when 9 of the stages in the game are translations of older levels from the older Sega Genesis titles, leaves more to be desired. I honestly do like the remix versions of some of the old stages. It works well, and sometimes I feel like brand new experiences. When I realize the best stages in the game are the levels designed specifically for Sonic Mania, I wonder why they didn't just try to make the whole game like this. One thing to acknowledge nostalgia, but when you use it as a crutch to make something sell like Sonic Mania did, it feels a bit disingenuous. Still though, I like the strides made to restore Sonic to former glory, and it leaves me hopeful that perhaps this style of Sonic game will be explored more than Sonic the Hedgehog's current projection. I feel like the team who worked on this was as good, if not better, at creating Sonic games than the team who worked on Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Therefore, I'm optimistic that a future Sonic title with more originality and less reliance on the past could truly dethrone Sonic 3 and Knuckles as the all-time best Sonic the Hedgehog platformer. Thanks very much for watching this episode of Versus. Which game do you like better? Let me know in the comments. Other than that, thanks for watching, have a great day, and check back later for more videos.